that work.
Right.
They did that hard work. They did that hard work now they would start every day, and usually Charles was the spokesperson for his brothers. He would come to us and say, we need to tell you, you're not qualified. You don't know what you're doing. We don't like this.
You know what, Paula, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How was it when you took your children out at, I think you said 11 years old?
Mm-hmm.
How was that adjustment period for them? Because they were already in school. So
Yeah, it was really tough. It was really tough, but we were really honest with them. We just said, you were expelled from school because we were late with the tuition payment. Okay, that's what the school's position is.
Right.
I said, now the other part of it is the school was mad because we had a picnic for all the Black parents before the school year began. And as the headmaster said, and you didn't ask permission.
Wow.
And I was like, you white people get together at the country club all summer.
Yeah.
But again, this whole thing of Black people, when you operate with a sense of autonomy, it is going to generate enmity among other people, right?
Right.
So yeah, our kids were in school. They did well in school. They were very social. They're extremely, the fact that they're smart wasn't really surprising because that's kind of genetics, but they are really nice. And so I think it was hard for them to conceptualize a system or a structure in which here I am, a well-behaved kid who's really an academic star, and I haven't done anything bad, and you're going to kick me out of school because my parents are late on the tuition. So it was a lot to try to process. And we tried to be really honest with them and say, no, we've never done this before. We've never done this before. But if their father told them, but objectively, your mother and I have better credentials from better schools than everybody at the school where you are right now. So we're fully committed to doing this and doing it well. Right. And we want your input. And they, beyond telling us you're not qualified, this input on things like, the reason that they ended up working at the Science Museum was because they said, we can't stand to be here with you all the time. And so we did that. We developed our own curriculum. Mm-hmm. We hired African and African-American graduate students at Ohio State to teach things like biology, French, and mathematics. And that turned out to be really, those were wonderful relationships for our children to have with grad students in the PhD programs. So I think that the whole prioritization, so even though they did not like being homeschooled, their father was such a constant presence, and he was so willing. Now, I'm the one who would be like, don't come to me with this again. Now, we don't ask me about it again. Okay. He was the one who would always say, come, let us reason together. He didn't care how many times they brought the issue, come, let us reason together. But he also didn't believe in spanking children. He said, there'll be no domestic violence in my home.
Yeah.
And
that's something we have to change too in our community, how we look at that. That's like a whole nother show within itself.
We really need to talk about this.
We need to do a show about that.
Especially in COVID-19 environment. And I would really strongly suggest, and we're not friends, but her work is really important. I don't know if you know a sister, Stacy Patton.
No.
She has written a book. I can't remember the exact title of it, but it is something about whipping kids won't save Black America, something like that.
Okay.
But if you Google her name, Stacy Patton, she currently is on the faculty at Morgan State.
Okay.
She has done some really incredible research linking rates of corporal punishment in Black communities to vestiges of post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yes, I agree.
So it's really, her work is really, really important. I really urge you to get it. Now, she's not married. She doesn't have kids. And so a lot of times people are like, you don't know nothing about this because you ain't raised no kids. That's true. She's not married. She doesn't have kids. She's a young sister. I don't think she's 40. But the research is impeccable. I mean, she went all the way back to West Africa, which is where most enslaved Africans came from, West Africa. And she looked at modes of discipline in West African societies. And this issue of public humiliation and beating was not something that we did.
Really?
No. No, we used community to say, is this how we behave? Like, you know how everybody has a grandparent or somebody who would be the voice of reason, who would say to you, is this how we do? Or I don't even know where is my sweet little girl? You know, they would love you back into right relationship, right? Mm-hmm. This thing of beating children and filming it and posting it on, So Stacey Patton's work is really, really informative.
Public shaming, all of that.
Yeah.
Talking to kids crazy.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I hear Black parents speak to their children and it just, they're like, what, do you hear yourself?
They don't hear themselves. I don't think they do.
Do you hear yourself? And what that does, in bringing it back to the whole problem in school and the school to prison pipeline, you know, most children, this was something that my husband said to me, and I had not thought about this, because when he first said no domestic violence, and I realized he was talking about spanking, and I went straight to spare the rod, spoiling child. And he said, you know, if you're going to quote scripture, let's put this in context. And the 23rd Psalm gives us the perfect example of the Good Shepherd, in which it says his rod and his staff, they comfort me. They are used against predators. They are not used against the flock. Which I had never thought of that. And he said, you know, people criticize Black men for being so distant and aloof and violent, and we never assess how we raise Black male children. And the fact of the matter is that for most Black children, their first introduction to violence happens at home at the hands of their mother or their grandmother or their aunties. And I was like, I need to sit with that.
Yeah.
I need to really sit with that.
But then that goes all the way back though to your book, Virtuous Women, though, because as Black women, we take on a lot of responsibility thinking that we can hold things down by ourselves. And it's just not possible. We're not equipped to really deal with managing, you know, being a single parent, managing, you know, children and working and doing all these different things. And it goes back to the whole outlook on family altogether.
Or recognizing that a lot of us do have the capacity to do that, because historically we've been forced to do that.
Right.
But a lot of times we don't think about how, it's not what I'm doing, but how am I doing it?
Right.
Right. So that I can, like, one of my dearest friends is a sister, Liana Asim. And one of the things that she said to me years ago that just really resonated with me was, she said, I don't pay that much attention to, I'm not that focused on saying grace at the table. She said, but I mean, I do that. But the real thing is, as I'm preparing meals for my family, as I take each ingredient out of the refrigerator, out of the pantry, I pray over it. Make this be wonderful. Make this be delicious. Make this nourish my family. And I was just struck by the intentionality of that, right? Of just bringing that kind of mindfulness to the mundane. As opposed to how a lot of times we come into the kitchen like, God, you want to eat again?
You're right.
Can I get out this kitchen? Can I get out this kitchen? Right? Can I get out this kitchen? But if I come to this as almost another form of worship and thanksgiving, right? I'm thankful for these children, right? I'm thankful for this husband. I'm thankful for this family. As I'm rolling out this bread dough, I'm thankful. I'm watching this yeast rise and I'm thinking, I'm thankful that I can prepare this. I'm making this apple butter. I know they're going to love it. I'm peeling these apples. I'm thankful that I can
But you,
cook this
right,
nourishment.
right. And you need enough time to not be in autopilot and flight to be able to
be able to do
absorb that.
And a lot of it too is how we manage our time.
Right.
Right. All of us have 24 hours every day. It's not like you have 36 hours and I only have 12.
Yeah.
And say, well, you know, she does all that, but you know, she got 36 hours. I only get 20.
Right.
We each get 24 hours every day, and every day the clock starts new, right?
Right.
A lot of times we don't realize how much of our time we squander, right? So when people say to me, I mean, I'd like to make jam, but bro, I ain't got time. We all have the same 24 hours.
Right.
And part of what, you know, when you see how people sometimes will be on social media and they're on Facebook posting about a show that they've been binge watching and they know all the characters and they've been watching every episode and they're engaged in big conversations about it. I'm like, that's why you can't make no apple jelly.
Exactly.
You watch the television. You can't make apple jelly and watch TV at the same time.
Right.
Okay. That's why you can't upholster your own chairs.
Because people will even call you. I have family members that'll call and say, you know, hey, what's going on? Or have you watched the latest episode? And if you say no, that you're not up to date, the conversation is done. There's nothing else to talk about. It's like, oh, it's Wednesday night. This is coming on. That's coming on. That's coming on. Conversation's dead.
That's it. And so people are having to figure out how to manage their time, how to manage their resources, right? Like the number of people that I know that don't know how to do their own hair. People who have not washed their own hair in 20 years. Now, right now, folks haven't.
They're not happy right now, are they?
Okay.
This is true.
But learning how to do so that when people say I don't have money for X, it's not so much that I don't have money for X, it's that I've used the money for something else. Right. And so part of going back to the original point about owning my own life means owning my own decisions, right? Up to and including owning who I choose to reproduce with. Everybody is not worthy. You know, you don't plant seed just anywhere. You prepare. That's why gardening is such a valuable thing for people to do. If you really want to maximize your yield, the time to think about your tomato harvest is not in September. The time to think about that is in January and February when the seed catalog comes and you go through and you look at all, you know, there's a lot of different cultivars of tomatoes. Do I want beefsteak? Do I want the amount of orange? Do I want the cherry tomatoes? Do I want the black tomatoes? What kind of tomatoes do I want?
Right.
You look at the seeds. You see what the soil requirements are. Can you meet that? Then you get it, and then you prepare the bed, right? You put in the organic soil. You just don't use the dirt. You get the organic soil. You add some soil amendments. You've been saving your compost. You've been making your own compost. Then you're ready to plant. Same thing with having spawn. You can't just roll up and have a baby with just anybody.
Right.
And how many times have we seen sisters have babies with people already got 2-3 kids he ain't taking care of? What makes you think he's gonna take care of yours?
Right.
This is true.
That's the seed that's defective seed right there. Okay. Now you might still be able to get a decent harvest, but just know you're gonna have to do a lot more.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot more work.
You can do a lot more. I would rather do my work on the front end, right? I get to pick the right seed, get the bed ready, save my eggshells, crush them up, dry them, dig the hole, put all that in there. And people see me and laugh like, girl, please.
But you know what? This is great. Like this is even speaking about relationships and gardening, like it just all ties in. It's amazing.
Yes.
It really is amazing.
Well, you know, Charles introduced me to gardening when we had our children. So we had the twins while I was in law school. So when I graduated, Charles and Damon were 13 months old. And I had nursed them for the first year, and I was starting to buy baby food. And he said, sweetie pie, we don't know who's bottling that. We need to grow our own food. I said, you are such a freak. Flip hair. Who you think has time? I just graduated from law school. But I don't know who you think. And he very calmly, he said, parenting is like gardening and pastoring. They all require the same daily attention to detail in the same posture of humility, head bowed, body bent. People who don't have time to garden probably don't have time to parent. I said,
what they call that? Mic drop?
Yep,
it's like, dude, mind blown.
What can you say to that? Yeah.
But it's the truth.
It is the truth.
Like I said, you can't dial it in. You can't just walk through you have to get down in the dirt and watch and observe what's happening. What's the rate of germination? And even if you've done all the work to prepare the bed, seeds come in on the air, right?
Yes.
Because
pollinate.
Don't we know in the word says Satan is the prince of the air? You can have a carefully planned bed with organic soil and non-GMO, open pollinated seed. Weeds come in on the air and they drop. And if you're not watching, that weed will choke out the plant that you have.
Yes, it sure will.
Right? They will choke it out. And you have to get right down and see it. Because again, doesn't it say in the word, God's going to separate the wheat from the tares? Because sometimes they grow up so close together. And parenting is the same way. It's the same. It's the daily attention to detail. But a lot of times as you said, there's so much going on.
Right.
We're so easily distracted, and it takes lots of people are forced to do it on their own, but it's not designed for that, right? It's designed to be a duality. It's designed for that, and that's how it works best. And when you have that duality, and I don't just mean, because there are a lot of people who are married, but they're not both parents. Right. But like, for example, when we had the twins, now none of my kids slept through the night before they were 2. And Damon and Charles did not get up together. I don't know why. I don't know if they just, in their little infant twin mind, realized this is my one half an hour to be an only child. What was really remarkable is every time that they got up, daddy got up. We always got up together. I would nurse, he would burp and change.
Wow.
See, that's what I mean about being fully engaged in the process, right? Fully engaged. Every time they got up, he got up. I never had to say, get up. Well, I never had to say a word. Never. He went to every pediatrician visit. Like he said, I love you, Paula, but these are my children. I appreciate your effort in bringing them here, but yeah.
Wow. So he was a full parenting role along with you. It wasn't just, okay, mom does the parenting and he's,
No gender roles. There were no gender roles.
As my mother said, she said, I do believe Charles is a better mother than you. Only because he was just an extremely patient, calm person. Right? He was a very, very patient, calm,
It brought the balance.
It was a perfect balance, because you can probably tell I'm a spaz.
Mm.
I was the parent like, you did what? He was always the one who was like, come, let us reason together. Now, explain to daddy what you were thinking when you did that. And I would be like, can I hit him now? Can I hit him now? But yes, he was very, very involved. And even with the homeschooling, he was the one who would periodically say, it's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, we're leaving, we're going to go fishing. I'm not sure what time we'll be back. He made space for them to be children as he was constantly explaining to them, this is why we're doing this. I know you don't like it. I know you don't agree with it, but this is why we're doing this. This is what your mother and I think is in your best interest. Like not doing sleepovers. That was a big thing. You know, they of course wanted to hang out with their friends and go to sleepovers. And his position was, you know, and sometimes I would go to him offline and say, you know, I wouldn't say anything in front of the kids, but I was like, you know, I think maybe don't you think we're being a little unreasonable? Because like everyone's going. And he would say, no, actually, sweetie pie, everyone's not going. everyone's not going. And I was like, but you know, I mean, I just think, and he said, you know, the freaks come out at night is not just a song.
That's true.
Really?
And he was very candid about saying, making sure that my children reach adulthood with all their orifices intact, that's job one. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's job one. And as long as they are asleep in my house, I know. Now, he was like, they can have anybody they want and as many as they want over here, mm-hmm. but they're not going anyplace else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's hard to hold those kinds of sort of rigid positions if you're not physically present consistently enough so that your children, even when they're angry, and they were frequently angry, but I think the reason that they were always so compliant with their father's direction was because of his, not just his physical presence, but his respectfulness. Mm-hmm. He was very respectful to them. He never spoke to them like, nigga, I'm the one feeding you. I brought you here, I'll take you out. All of that stuff that we, you know, that crazy talk that we do with children, say something else, I'm gonna hit you in the mouth. There was none of that. Mm. There was none of that. He never, ever spoke to them like that. And as a consequence, one of the things that people frequently mention to me is how unusual people find it the way that my sons speak to one another. They speak to one another in ways that are so remarkably respectful and kind that other people say to me, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Wow. But that's learned behavior. Right. And I think we don't pay enough attention to the lessons that we are actually teaching our children, not what we say, but how we're actually behaving. And so we have, before people are fathers, they should be husbands. And frequently as fathers, their children are observing them as husbands being disrespectful to their wives. Mm-hmm. And as mothers, we should be wives before we become mothers. And way too often our children observe us as women who are disrespectful to our husbands. And so then we hear parents talk about these kids are so disrespectful. They learn that from you. You talk to each other crazy. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Right.
You talk to each other so stank and crazy. and then you wonder why your children fight each other. Right. They've learned that from you. And I think people don't realize that sibling rivalry is an outgrowth of dysfunctional marriages and relationships.
Wow.
Say that again.
Sibling rivalry is an outgrowth of dysfunctional parent relationships. Because I think what happens is when siblings, obviously they see differences in each other, right? And a lot of those differences are you know, we look at our children like, oh my God, that's just like your mother. Oh my God, that's just like your dad, right?
Right.
If the child has grown up in an environment in which the two parents not only see differences in each other, but despise those differences and are stank in the way they talk about those differences, like you make me sick. I can't stand the sight of you. All that. You know, that stuff that goes on and on.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how children learn that that's how you respond to things that you don't like in other people, as opposed to saying, you know, that's weird. Okay?
Right.
That's definitely weird. But you know, I love you. I mean, so that's my husband was very odd. He was very, very odd. And we were as different as night and day. Charles was 6'3.5", 240 pounds. He was an athlete. He was brilliant. He whizzed through Dartmouth in 3 years, graduated with honors and a box of varsity letters. Okay. He's very disciplined, always under control. We were married for 36 years, 8 months, and 22 days. And in all that time, I never, ever heard him utter a word of profanity. Ever.
Really
Ever.
amazing. Wow.
Ever. Now, no one can say that about me. I want to be a Christian in my heart, but you know, sometimes I'm not that disciplined. He was consistently disciplined at all times. At all times. So I thought that was very weird. You know, I thought his lack of emotional responses to things was very peculiar to me. He thought my talking was excessive. Like he said to me once, "Sweetie pie, are your lips tired?" Because my ears are tired. But we recognized the differences in each other, but we were okay with it. You know, like I knew he was weird. He knew I was weird. We were okay with that. Our children see differences in each other and they adore each other. I think when people see, so back to the homeschooling thing, people used to ask us, how'd you keep your kids from fighting all the time? Because Damon and Charles are only 2 years older than Evan. So the three of them were, you know, growing up together in close quarters with one another all day, every day. They're each other's best friends even now.
Wow.
So I think that's learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think this goes back to Aisha, to your point about when we're so busy, we're overscheduled, and that doesn't leave us enough time to, you know, when somebody was saying how starting her day, she was getting up in prayer. It's stunning to me the number of women who tell me, I just don't have time to pray every morning.
Right.
I'm like, that's why your life sucks.
Yeah.
You need to either get up earlier, go to bed earlier, get up earlier.
Night and day.
But that's how you set the day.
Right.
Right? It's like saying I want to make yeast rolls for dinner, but I don't have time to wait for the yeast to proof. You're not.
Right.
You're going to have to fix your schedule.
Right.
Because that's how you set the tone of the day. And if there's going to be peace in our time, there has to be peace in our homes. And if there's going to be peace in our home, do you know who's primarily going to have to be responsible for that? You know.
Yeah.
We have to be the ones that are grounded enough that we can say,
yeah.
That's like, you know, what they say when mom's not happy, nobody's happy.
Nobody's happy.
Right.
That's true.
But that's the flip side of that coin. When mom is at peace, is at peace.
And that's why we can see people who, like I've known older women in my church. One of the biggest advantages I think is growing up in this church is I know people, women in their late 90s that I've known all my life. And I have observed how some of them have maintained a level of equilibrium in the face of circumstances that looking at them now that I'm 65 years old and I know more of their backstory, I'm looking at them like, what? This happened to her? Because this is not somebody that I just met. These are people that I've known literally all my life. And I contrast that with hearing people talk about these microaggressions and me time. Maybe the problem is not enough time in prayer and meditation, first thing and last thing.
Right.
Because, we are the descendants of women who have survived things that are literally unimaginable.
Can't even imagine. Yeah, you're right.
Unimaginable horrors.
Right.
And get up in the morning and brush your teeth and comb your hair, put on your clothes and like operate in the world.
Right.
So we should be, but I think this goes back to your point about we don't have the same level of access to those folks. I've been really fortunate that I've always had tons of older women around me in my life. Sometimes the things that they've said, I didn't want to hear. I was like, shut up.
Right.
But that information was always there. And there's a whole generation of women now who don't know what to do with a bag of dry beans.
Right.
I mean, something that basic.
There was some disruption in that information that you got and learned from your elders. Now the young people are learning from TV. They're learning from popular culture, like rappers. And so, how are they supposed to know how to endure through life, how to endure through a marriage, right? They're thinking marriage is the music that you see and,
right.
It's always going to be like this romantic, wonderful, you know what I mean? And that's not the reality.
No, that's not marriage. That's not marriage. That's dating.
Right.
Okay. There's a difference. Right. I think you've touched on a really critical point. I think there are at least two elements to that. I think one is older people, and I count myself in that group, older people who are 65 and older, have, I think, not been consistent about living up to the responsibility of transferring information to the next generation. I think the other part of that is younger people today are much less receptive to unsolicited feedback. When I was growing up, when I was a young bride, I got married when I was 21. It was a regular thing for women at church to give me unsolicited feedback about, how short my dress was, or what I was doing, or when I had my kids, I had so much advice while I was pregnant. You should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. Why are you wearing them shoes? All of that. It never occurred to me to say, mind your own business. I thought that. It never occurred to me to say that. And even before then, when I was young in high school, junior high school, the constant feedback from older women, it was constant. There was constant critique. It never occurred to me to say, shut up and mind your own business.
Right.
Now, conversely, I have found as I've gotten older, when I have offered unsolicited advice, not always, but I have been surprised at the number of times that younger people have let me know, I don't need your advice.
Right. This is my decision, my life.
Or, don't hate on my love.
Right. Right.
Don't hate on my love. And I think women are much more both vulnerable and resistant. I think we're more vulnerable because I don't know a demographic that is as vulnerable as Black women in America. So we are exposed. We need all of the information and assistance that we can get. But at the same time, we tend to be very disrespectful of one another in ways that it's hard for me to imagine a teenage boy speaking to a grown man as though you just jealous of me because I'm young.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you know, a lot of these little girls really think that people are jealous of them.
They do. I mean, I see some of that stuff just even scrolling through Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and how girls talk to each other where they now call each other bruh, and
Uh-huh.
you know, which
Yeah.
it kind of throws things off. It's like you're not even seeing the other person as another woman or
Right.
another female.
And you
Now
certainly,
it's bruh this, bruh that. And it's like they take on these roles and they're just extra
mm-hmm.
masculine. They find
That,
extra masculinity.
yeah, and when older women talk to them, there frequently is this presumption that you don't know anything that would be beneficial to me.
Right.
Right. Right.
And I think the other thing is, and this is a weird outgrowth, I think, of patriarchy, is because patriarchy is so tied to the objectification of women
Mm-hmm.
and the female form, that it encourages younger women to believe, and even older women to believe, that my worth is tied up in my measurements, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the length or thickness of my hair, the texture of my skin, which is one of those things, and that's not unique to Black people. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, you know, you can go to any hotel on vacation, or I travel a lot for work. And I'm always struck by how men, Black, white, Latino, whatever, will stroll around and go to the pool and they could look like Orca. And they are not the least bit self-conscious, right? They're just parading around like a big fat turd. But women have this whole thing of, you know, everything's got to be right. You know, my abdomen, I have to have this cover up.
Right.
Thinking, that's so interesting, because men don't, and women know on some level that no matter how accomplished you are, you will always be evaluated, and the comment will at some point come back to how you look.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, men could be ugly as death riding backward on a roach, but if they make enough money, or they have enough power, no one will comment, oh my God, he's as ugly as death riding backward on a roach.
Right. Right.
And so, because that's a backdrop,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of young women feel like if they see a woman who's attempting to give them advice and they feel like, I look cuter than you, ergo I don't have to listen to what you say.
Right.
Because I'm cuter than you.
Right. Right. And I think a loss of the basic values: respect your mother, your father, and your mother, so that your days can be long upon the earth. Right. And so I contemplate that, because I know my mom, I think one of her frustrations was that she didn't feel we listened to her. Like the young people listen enough. Like she's lived and she knows stuff. And then, you know, she doesn't feel we take it in as much as we should. And in the past, we haven't.
Right.
Right? Because this culture teaches you to be individualistic, and that this is old, you know, like the whole old wives' tales thing, right?
Yes.
Old fashioned. This is, I was back in your day, but you know, in my day, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole respect for your father and mother, so that your days could be long upon the earth, was probably very practical advice, because the stuff they were teaching you, if you didn't respect them, that means you didn't listen to them.
Right.
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 And that means you wouldn't live that long, because it'd be something that they, you know, that they taught you didn't listen to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Know?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of people who have had unpleasant circumstances and relationships with a co-parent, one of the things that I teach an adult women's Sunday school class. And that's how this book, The Power of a Virtuous Woman, initially that book was written as our Sunday school book. I wrote it. So at the end of each chapter, there are like questions and stuff. But one of the things that we really struggle with is, when I say to people, you know, we need to really think about, in the challenging situations that we face now, how many of them did someone try to tell us in advance,
Mm-hmm.
right? like, so you're married to this guy and he turned out to be Satan's own imp. Did nobody said, hey, maybe, I'm not sure. But a lot of times, we won't hear, we won't listen. And sometimes what people are telling us, some old wives my mother and I fell out because when the babies were born, remember how people used to put a silver dollar on the baby's navel?
Mm-hmm.
And my mother really believed that if you didn't put a silver dollar on the baby's navel, their navel would be protruding. Okay, so it was a whole thing. And she came with me to the pediatrician. And the pediatrician was saying to her, Mrs. Penn, there's the whether or not the infant's navel is protruding is about how the umbilical cord was cut. It's really not about that. And my mother looked at him and said, and how many children have you given birth to? Because I've had 4. I've had. Yeah, don't try to. So yeah, I did not tape a silver dollar to my children's navels. And my mother was angry about that. But a lot of the things that are old wives' tales work.
Right.
Right? And a lot of people, see, my feeling was just accumulate the information, because it might be, for example, onion syrup. I hated having to take onion syrup when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother had to take it when she was a little girl. Her mother had to take it. My great-grandmother brought this thing about onion syrup for congestion and colds. And did I not give all my kids onion syrup at the first hint of a cough or something? Yes, it's an old wives' tale. It works.
It works, yeah.
It works.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not listening, you can't even figure out what's silly, like silver dollar on the navel.
Exactly. Salt over the shoulder and.
Yeah, what's superstition? What kinds of things actually have some? Now again, with the silver dollar, they're now showing that, because of the amount of silver that used to be in silver dollar, that mineral was deemed beneficial for the healing of that cut umbilical cord.
Wow, interesting.
So sometimes, we have to figure out what's an old wives' tale, what's superstition, what is a revelation of herbal medicines that we have forgotten, right?
Right.
Information that was available to us, and we have, just like the issue about nursing, right? That Black women for the past 20 years, 30 years have had the lowest rate of breastfeeding of any other demographic in the country. We are now, in the last 10 or 15 years, broadly across our community, really dealing with all of the health benefits from breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. But for a long time, Black women didn't breastfeed. When I was breastfeeding my kids, people were asking me, Brother Charles can't afford formula? Seriously, are y'all up against it? No, I'm breastfeeding my children because that's the best thing for them.
Yeah.
So I think, as information processes through, so I think it's both. I think older people sometimes feel like, you don't want to listen, I'm gonna let you bump your head. And I don't think I understand it, but I don't think that's the attitude we should have.
Right. Yeah. And I can see where they feel that way, or why they feel that way, but you're right. There has to be some responsibility from people who are older towards the younger, and for the younger to realize that we can't allow our culture to be determined by our enemies, people who don't like us, who haven't liked us for hundreds of years. They shouldn't be determining our culture. Your culture is supposed to come from your elders. It's
Yes.
always been that way,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know? And I think we better get it together now while there are still elders on the planet that know stuff that we need to know.
Yes.
And because Samaya, I was talking to you earlier about the saddest part of, you know, what's happening with COVID-19 at this point is situations like this, swiping out generations of history, lessons and certain things that generations haven't even really been able to speak to us about certain things. And it's really wiping a lot of that out. We need to really take the time to reconnect with our elders, because things like this happen where it's really wiping out the older community,
Right.
you know, and we won't always have these type of opportunities.
I think you're right. I think that's an excellent point.
Because that's what I look at when I look at, you know, all of the deaths happening. They say, okay, well, it's happening to a lot of elderly. And in my mind, it's just like, you know, powerful people, you know, grandmothers, you know, with powerful information, things that have not even been passed over.
Right.
And it's just gone.
Yes.
It's gone. No longer have that opportunity, you know, and that's something that's exclusive to our race that is not, so, you know, that something that other races really deal with. You know, that's something that is really just happening in our community. And it's like a whole nother aspect of the deaths that are happening with COVID-19. But that's really how it hits me. I have a cousin that passed away, you know, last week regarding the COVID-19. And she held all the history. She was that young cousin. I mean, she was an elder, but she listened to all the side conversations that her mom was having.
Right.
And so she was able to tie in things together that allowed me to go on Ancestry.com and find information and link family members together. You know, she was able to break past a lot of those difficult conversations of things that happened that no one wanted to talk about, and really give me that information. And she's just gone. So it's like a wealth of knowledge and history, family history and heritage just gone in the blink of an eye.
Now, there's an African proverb that says, when an elder dies, a library is burned to the ground, because it's just that much information.
Yeah.
And it's tragic. I'm hopeful. I always try to see what can be learned in every difficult situation. I feel like the more difficult the situation is, the more valuable the lesson can be. And one of the things that I'm hoping is going to happen as a result of the real trauma of these tragic deaths will be a renewed interest, going back to Samaya, your point, a renewed interest in what is it that the elders are holding. Because I think there are a lot of people right now who are very upset about, understandably so, about not being able to visit their grandparents or their elderly relatives. But a lot of people weren't taking advantage of the opportunity to visit them when they could. Right? Because there was just this assumption that, oh yeah, I'll see them.
Right.
Yeah, I'll see them. I'm hopeful that this will impress upon us the fact that tomorrow is not promised.
Right.
If there are people that you care about, you need to make time to see about them. If there's information that they have, I don't care if it's a recipe for apple pie, if it's tell me again how, when did our family come here?
Right.
Whatever it is, don't wait. Don't assume that there will always be another opportunity. There might not be another opportunity.
Right. That's right.
And I'm just, because I know a lot of people who are elderly and who live alone. Some of them are in assisted living facilities, but when you talk to them, one of the most common things you hear is how lonesome they are. how very, very lonesome they are, how much they miss their families, or how excited they are when a child or grandchild calls, much less comes to visit, and it's not a holiday. They just came to visit and spend the afternoon. And these are not people whose loved ones live in Bangladesh. I mean, I'm talking about people, your relatives live in town.
Right, right.
They live in town. And I get that it's awful that you can't see them now.
Yeah.
But it's also awful that you didn't see them when you could.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's one of those hard truths that we have to say to each other.
Yes.
We have to say to each other, you need to do better. You need to go see about your auntie.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait until because people get to the funeral or the homegoing and it's just like, oh, they was wonderful.
I know.
Really?
Right. Right.
Exactly.
You love them so much, really? Because you didn't see them.
Right.
And obviously at the homegoing is not the time to say that. But
Right, but
sometimes I know I'm not the only one.
right.
Sometimes you're sitting there watching people and you're like, now you didn't even all that hollering.
Right.
All that hollering and snot. I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm just sitting in the back like, really? Really?
Well, you are too funny.
Okay, seriously, you've never thought that?
Yeah.
I know you have.
It's true.
It's true. People get to the service, they be hollering and screaming and snotting and crying. And I'm thinking, you didn't have no time for this person.
Right. Right.
You didn't have half an hour once a month.
Right.
You didn't have and now you're going to fall out. I'm going to need you to sit down. Bagging this service out for 3 hours. Sit down. Everybody got to speak.
Right.
Really?
You are right. You're
Yeah.
right.
So I just think that we have to sort of bringing it back full circle. The thing that was part of what irked me about the article in Harvard Magazine. Don't give me this facile, one-sided analysis
Mm-hmm.
when you know that the school to prison pipeline is a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're going to act like it's not.
Right.
And you know that the socialization in school is not working.
Right.
And you're going to act like it is.
Right. Right.
And you know that our children are traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all saw, 2 months ago when that little black girl in Florida, 6 years old, was arrested and put in handcuffs
Yeah.
at school.
Mm.
And the police officer, the school called. Now, why you would call the police for 6-year-old?
Exactly. Like, who's accountable? Who's being held accountable here?
And the officer who arrested that child and put on those handcuffs while that baby was crying was black.
Wow.
Mm.
I was like, really, dude?
Wow.
Really?
Where's the judgment, right? Like the exercising of judgment.
What's happening in your head at that moment that you think, you know what I should do right now? I should put handcuffs on this baby as she's crying and saying, no, I don't want handcuffs on. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do that anyway.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Which just goes to show you all of us are not well.
No. No.
Okay. All of us are, because there's something clearly wrong, that you would call the police about the conduct of a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, just right there.
Right. Something broke down. There's a breakdown.
Thank you. And then you, as the police officer, arrive and you decide in that moment, I'm going to put handcuffs on this baby and put her in the back of this police car while she's crying.
Wow.
And take her to jail.
Wow.
Just that whole thought process, like the steps that you have to take to
get there.
Something like that is just
right. The desensitization, right? Because there had to be a whole lot of that going on before we get to that point where you can
Yes.
react to the
That's a
signal.
lot of desensitizing.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, wow.
That's a lot.
But again, it's just a variation on, have you ever been at the supermarket and you're walking to your car in the parking lot and you hear and you see people snatch a 3-year-old or 4-year-old and speak to them in ways that, I guess if I met Adolf Hitler, I might talk to him like that, or Satan. But what could a 4-year-old be doing that would make you speak like that?
Yeah.
And this is your own child. This is your own bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh.
Right.
This is your child.
Right.
And you are speaking to them in a way that I wouldn't speak to a dog like that.
Right. But I think a lot of people are operating in automatic, right? That's how they were spoken to. That's how people speak around. So they don't even see,
They normalize the behavior.
they're not hearing it. They're not truly hearing it.
And I think a lot of times when we hear it as bystanders, it's so hard to know what, if anything, to do.
Right.
Right. Several times I've gone up to, not so much with men, but when it's a sister, I've gone up and said, wow, it's a lot, right?
Pause. Just give me 1 minute to pause. Is Terry here? Start barking. The door was There's gonna be a lot of commotion for like a good 2 minutes. Okay.
Several times I've gone up and said, like once, this was probably 6 or 7 months ago before COVID, I was at the movies. I got one of those movie passes, which I really enjoy. So I was at the movie, but it was in the evening. It was like 8. My show, the movie I was going to see was going to start at 9 or something. It was late. And there was a young sister there with a little boy, 2 little boys. But one of them was really giving her a fit. And he looked like he was maybe 4. And she was talking to this child like this was her dude and she got him with some other woman. Okay, like that.
Yeah.
And so she was like, and we're going to this bathroom, I'm going to wear you out. So I followed her in the bathroom and I said, looks like you have your hands full. And she turned with that, like, don't try to get in my business look, right? And I said, I totally understand. I have 3 sons, a set of twins, and the baby's only 2 years younger. And she was like, oh, you must know. And I said, yeah, sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes we just need like to step away from the edge because they just work in your last nerve. I said, you want me to just sit with him for a minute while you get some water or something? Because I don't mind. It's away before my movie starts anyway. I'm sitting right out here. And so she came out with me and said, I'm just going to go down here to the water fountain, get some water. And she came back later and she said, you know what? I thank you.
Wow.
Because like I told her, I said, what I was concerned about was, I was concerned about getting in your business, but I was more concerned about the fact that when you were out in the hall screaming at him, other people were looking, and I saw somebody go and speak to the police officer. Okay. And what I didn't want to have happen was for the police to come up and say something, the wrong something to you at the wrong time. And then you have the wrong response. And then the consequence being your child is taken from you.
Right.
Because that happens more often than we want to acknowledge.
Oh, absolutely.
And so a lot of times I think as older women, we need to do better about speaking to our younger sisters and saying, because I've done that on planes before. I've done that on trains before. I've been like, I know it's hard to travel with little kids. You want me to, can I help you? Because I don't mind, babies like me. I don't mind. I'll hold the baby for you. And you don't have to wonder about me running off. We're on the plane, right? You're just 2 rows ahead of me. Okay. I'm happy to hold the baby for half an hour or an hour. Just give you a chance to just, because sometimes that's all we need is just a moment to just.
Right.
But a lot of times we see this and we just are like, these young women today, they don't know nothing about raising no kids.
Right.
But sometimes they just need a little bit of help.
Right. That's called being a community, right?
Yes. Yes. Because we used to do that for each other.
Yeah.
Right. There used to be plenty of arms to help hold your baby.
Right.
And we don't have that in the same way.
Right.
So
On that note, I think we're gonna wrap it up.
okay.
But I wanna definitely
We have to do this again because it's
ask
so
you to
much.
come
It's
back.
so much.
Yeah, and it's so much wisdom that you
Yeah,
have.
Paula, I like, you gave me so much to just sit and think about. I know I'm gonna be thinking more and more and more, and just because you so much information, wisdom, knowledge, just everything.
And
Well,
thoughts, yeah.
appreciate it.
All from gardening and homeschooling. Like it just came full circle. It's so all it's interconnected, and you know.
Well, I'd love to. I post a lot of the stuff that I do with the garden on Facebook. So last week I did a whole series of things on how to start seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And so later today I'm going to post the stuff of how to start potatoes, how to plant potatoes in potato grow bags. So even if you don't have a big yard, like you can buy these grow bags. They're just bags, and you can grow potatoes and onions.
Oh,
And
in a bag?
yeah, in a bag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in a bag.
Oh,
And you can grow a lot. Last year I grew
Really?
100 pounds of potatoes in like
Really?
5 grow bags. Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I have to see that.
Yes.
Yo,
Yeah.
yeah.
And once you see how easy it is, you'll be like, I cannot believe I've not been growing potatoes.
Are you serious? I can't. Okay.
Potatoes are about the easiest thing to grow. But most things are pretty easy to grow, but potatoes are really easy to grow, and they look lovely when they're growing. They grow like a big plant and they're really pretty. And then children love digging them up. It's like an Easter egg hunt, but better.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never had a potato that was grown like right out of the ground, if you've not had a potato, you've not really, the difference between the way tomatoes taste that somebody grew in their yard and a tomato you buy at the store. Potatoes are the same way. When you have a potato that you've grown, you'll be like, I don't even know what I was eating before.
Oh, I gotta do that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I gotta do that.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to be posting those later.
Okay.
Okay.
So definitely, we'll
I'll friend request on Facebook, Paula.
Okay, I'll look for that, and definitely that would be great.
Okay. So I want to thank our audience for sitting with us and participating in this conversation. Again, with Paula Penn-Nabrit, and I want to thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, even with my hair not combed out.
Beautiful. And the wisdom and the knowledge that you bring to our community is needed. And we want to continue the conversation with you.
I would love to. I would love to. And definitely, like I said, give me an hour or so, but look for those potato grow bag posts on Facebook.
Okay, great. Okay. Definitely.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you. And please don't forget to like our channel, to subscribe to our channel.
I did.
Posts. And great. And to find us on Facebook and Instagram at My Black Health. Bye-bye.